Welcome back from that brief break. We are discussing today about electoral democracy or electoral authoritarianism. Which of this is Uganda experiencing? So before we went for that break, Henry, you were discussing about issues concerning, also you hinted on the aspects of captivity of Ugandans. And there's one thing that Ugandans have been grappling on about, that is the militarization of public service or public sector. I want still you, Henry, to try to elaborate more on that. Why are we experiencing all this, whereby we are seeing very many military persons taking over most of the public institutions?
Thank you, Abel. Of course, the argument that the regime has given us is that the rest of society is very corrupt, very unpatriotic, and their way of work is slowing the country down. And we have been told that the military are very energetic, patriotic Ugandans, that whatever they do it for the interest of Uganda. The rest of us do it for the interest, for our own egoistic interests. Which is why you are seeing the military managing government programs such as Operation Wealth Creation, military officers managing NADS. The military has been appointed to manage the police force. The military is in parliament. Generals are ministers. It's almost, I mean, the presence of the military is almost everywhere. But let me give you an example of a case where we did not get it right when we went to the military. You remember the floods, the landslides in Bududa. Of course, when the landslides happened, the Ministry of Disaster, Ministry OP, Office of the Prime Minister, Department of Disaster Preparedness rushed to the scene. They picked their hose, and they also picked their spades, and they went to do work. But the military was called upon immediately. When the military got there, the soldiers said, "Look, you cannot use spades and the hose. What are you doing? Bring the cranes. Why don't we have a crane here or an earth mover?" They said the only crane that is available is with Rocco Construction Company. But that crane, Rocco needs a local service purchase order. They need a contract. They need these procurement processes. The military said, "You are joking." So they rushed and picked the crane from Rocco. They took it to the scene. They assembled it, but they couldn't use it because they forgot to pick the expert that operates the crane from Rocco. And Rocco said, "You are taking it at your own peril. We can only let our operator go if we have the paperwork, including a contract, which would take time." So in the end, the crane could not be used. The soldiers who had laughed at the officers from Office of the Prime Minister that were using spades and hose also resorted to using spades and hose. As we speak today, Rocco is in court and is charging government billions of money for a crane that was taken without its consent, and a crane that, even as we speak, is still on the site. I'm trying to explain how military men sometimes just mess up things instead of correcting them. Recently, we had NADS. I think NADS was kind of narrowed down. Operation Wealth Creation, you had what's happened to it. And I'm not sure police is one of the most well-run institutions. The point I'm saying is that militarization of public service delivery, militarization of civil service may not necessarily be done in the interests of improving the services delivered to the people, but it serves another interest. And most likely, the interest could either be traced, the roots of that interest could either be traced in the concept of regime survival or entrenching electoral authoritarianism. And therefore, I want to argue that the militarization of affairs and public service delivery in this country has not proved evidence that it can change things. We know that right now in UNRWA, in the construction industry, they are saying that all the construction contracts should go to the military. But what is the capacity of that military? And are those who, what type of population did the military men come from? What kind of society? Did they come from the same society where the other corrupt officials are coming from? And haven't we seen military men engaging in self-enrichment? And therefore, the argument that they are more patriotic and therefore there will be less corruption may also collapse to the ground. The point I'm making is that the most important thing is to re-empower our institutions. It's important to remove the hand that has captured these institutions, allow them to work, and let the law take its course. Let there be rule of law. Let the people that have violated the provisions, whether they have violated the Anti-Corruption Act, whether they have violated the Leadership Code Act, whether they have violated other acts, other penal code provisions, let them face the law. But let us not militarize, because when you militarize, then you demotivate, because then the introduction of the military serves to dismantle and distort the well-established hierarchies that used to serve as instruments of motivation for the civil service. Back to you, Abel.
Thank you, Henry. Gerald, I want to bring you now on. You just heard from Priska, who also reports from Parliament, saying that in response to the worsening human rights records in Uganda currently, some section of members, especially those ones from opposition, are planning to censure a motion against Security Minister Honorable Major General Jim Muhezi. And prior to that, we saw that these very members staged a walk out of Parliament. What is your take on this? Some of these actions which are being taken by the members of Parliament?
Thank you, Abel. You know, we need leaders who are responsive and accountable. When you head a department or a ministry, we expect you to report to the members of the public on matters, on affairs that, you know, affects the people. This is the minister who heads the docket of the security, and there has been worsening situation. Now torture is a form of governance. People, they are saying that we are seeing disappearances, we are, you know, seeing the forms of torture or the kind of things. So we expect at least a minister to make a statement, to report to the parliament on where the people, on where these Ugandans are. So I really agree with the decision that the opposition has taken. You know, they need to put, by actually walking out of the parliament in a protest. That's a very good decision, you know, that the parliament, the opposition MPs too, at least to show the solidarity with their people, with their people from their constituency. So, you know, really planning to have a motion, you know, with the majority from the ruling party. I don't know whether they will succeed, but you know, when you're fighting, when you're trying to engage like a government, you have to do all of the necessary measures, you know, to take all of the means to see that at least the win comes from your side. So in one way or the other, let them push to see whether they can yield the success out of it. Yeah, that's my take in regards to that.
Henry, I would also like to get your thoughts on the actions being taken by the members of parliament, especially those ones from opposition, of trying to push for a motion to censure the security minister?
Yeah, thank you, Abel. Of course, I'm also curious to hear what Priska would say. But if you look at the opposition in parliament, how many do we have? 109. And how many? What's the total number of MPs? About 500 and 65 or something. Priska, you correct me if I'm wrong on those figures. Now, with the numbers of opposition we have in parliament, I think they constitute only about a fifth. So they don't have the numbers. So they suffer from the tyranny of numbers from the regime and its apologists who are independent. And therefore, you look around and ask yourself a question. In the situation we are in, what else would the MPs do? The one is in opposition. Remember, two of their colleagues are in, I think this is now, we are counting 157 days. The Honorable Sisewanyana and Honorable Segirinya are incarcerated in Kitalia. And they have never been tried. All the time they come, they just hear the mention, and you wonder, how do you arrest before investigating? Because by arresting before investigating, you're not even sure that the person you're arresting committed the crime. But by taking so long for the case to take off, I think you are doing that. But what were the options? The first option would be to go for the people that are perpetrating torture. Do they have the power? The people who are torturing are very strong and powerful. The other option they had is to go into dialogue. But dialogue with who? The torturer? You mean the one who is torturing? In their vocabulary, they have forgotten that there is something called dialogue? Why have they chosen torture and these other acts? And acting in a way as if they were militia forces, forgetting that these are bona fide, legitimate managers of the state, and therefore they should use the formal state institutions and the formal laws and the gazetted places. So the other option, the third option would be to do nothing. But they have chosen none of those three because none of those would help. So by choosing to walk out, of course, walk out will be of no consequence, but at least they're being seen to be doing something and they're getting on the record. Because I think as of now, the best inoculation is going to be to expose the nakedness of the regime and these acts as much as you can, and try to draw attention. Because if they did nothing, and of course out of the options I've mentioned, the only one that is in their power is to walk out. Because if you stand on the floor of parliament and request for a minister to produce a statement, some of these ministers may not even know what is happening. They don't even know where the orders to torture are coming from. It is too big ahead of them. Maybe Honorable Major General Mugisha Muhwezi doesn't even know who is torturing. He doesn't even know where the orders are coming from. Maybe the people who are torturing, or the ones that are commanding the torturers, have much more power than the minister himself. But nonetheless, go for him and get to be on record, because you see, well, at this point, we don't know what you can do to achieve what. Back to you, Abel.
Okay, but Priska, you've just heard Gerald and Henry shared their insights about the moves being taken by the opposition members of parliament. And for you, you report directly from parliament. What do you take of the move that the members of parliament are trying to do? Do you think it's a right move, or they are just trying to do something they won't achieve in the long run? What are your thoughts about their actions?
Of course, the move was taken by the censure of the minister. You could really see it was a desperate move, like it was the last resort. But I think, but as Henry alluded to the fact that they have already lost the match before even the ref comes to the pitch because of the number factor. But there was also another proposal that they had made, that they are going to put registers at each constituency for families and relatives who have had people who have disappeared, to register and get contact details about the disappearance. And I think it is in response to although before the pronouncement was made, the minister's statement hadn't come. Because when the minister came to the floor, he said that the opposition claims to have handed over to both Jim Muhwezi and David Muhoozi a list of the people that have disappeared. I've lost count of the number, the actual number that the LOP had tabled. And the minister said, but the list that the LOP had tabled had no address. You can imagine. So, and it got me to question that if they had no addresses, there are always police cases, because when somebody disappears, the first point you go to reference is the police. Of course, government can get all those details of the disappearances. That's where they can start from. So the argument that the number of the list that was tabled by the opposition didn't have addresses and contacts can't hold water in the first place. It really doesn't make sense. But you could really see they are really struggling to piece information up to try to explain the torture. But because I know that I'm making my final remarks, because and me, what I'm trying, because we've talked about the what is happening about the torture but we really need to come up with solutions. And I think one thing that Ugandans need to do is let them not lose hope, because states are temporary. States come and states go, but the country as Uganda will still remain. And for what we know is, what I would like to encourage Ugandans is to keep on talking about these tortures. And the next thing is to document. And we are going to document these details. Probably we are going to use the media, the media stories. If one of your relatives disappears and you have a platform to tell your story, please walk back. Don't say that even if I talk, there is nothing that is going to happen. Because for all I know is the people who have tried to get media attention or social media attention, there have been some results. So they should not fear to approach social media, or even you can go to those political parties headquarters. There is someone who is going to capture. And because we need all that evidence when the state changes in the near future. Because when the new state comes in, or the new regime, there will be hope of prosecuting these. Because you take an example of the South Africans, when they're going through the apartheid, they must have lost hope that this is their doom. But here came in Nelson Mandela and that commission that investigated. So we shouldn't lose hope. We should document all this evidence that we can use in the future, because and it's good to document that evidence when the memories are still fresh, because as time goes on, some memories wear out. And we have had very many people, especially on the ruling side, making excuses for the president. Even the deputy speaker said yesterday, the president, we know he's very good, everything he can know, is not behind this torture. But we know that he's the best beneficiary of this torture. So no one should tell you that all these practices are going on without him knowing. So that is why when you look back at history, when the atrocities were being committed by the armies commanded by both Amin and Obote, we kept on saying that it was Obote who was doing the torture, it was Amin. So we should keep the same narrative. No one should tell us that it is the army, not the president, because he is the commander-in-chief of the forces. So if we kept the narrative that it was Amin and Obote, we should keep the same narrative that it is Museveni, not to say he's Ameho or he's everything. But I know it would appear too much to ask of Ugandans, because we are all living in tricky times. We are on, as one musician said, Tuli Kubunkenke. We should, I think hope is the only thing we have left. Let's be hopeful that things will later on improve, but that one time, or that all these people who are behind these perpetrations will be held accountable. Because if you keep quiet about the situation, you're just emboldening the perpetrators to continue. I know the Kakwenza thing, it was meant to send us threatening messages, that if you try to oppose the government, this is what is going to happen to you. I think they have partly achieved that, because all of us currently are kind of scared. Most of us are scared, but we shouldn't give into our fears, and we should now we have all the hope that we have the social media, and we should hold on to that and to our hope that things are going to change in the near future.
Thank you so much, Priska. Henry and Gerald, as you are giving your parting shots, I want you also to hint on the statements that are coming out from the international community on the concerns about the violations of the human rights of Ugandans, as you give your parting shots. I will start with you, Henry.
Thank you, Abel. My parting shot is that Uganda has a historical record of presidents for life and one-party regimes. To those international actors and friends, but also citizens of Uganda, but also the entire Africa, I want to say that we have been tolerant for so long. We have tolerated the so-called imperial presidents. We have tolerated predatory presidents. We have tolerated the so-called big men with the tremendous organizational power to present facades of democracy. I think the international community, they shouldn't just stop on the statements that have been released, because there's no regime anywhere under the sun that is not vulnerable to international pressure. I also want to state that, like our grandfathers say, that even the longest snake has its tail, and sooner or later the tail end arrives. You stated it very well, Priska, that the best you can do is document, and document we should. But also a word of advice to our brothers that are meting out these acts of torture is that, you know, nature is nature. Everything that has a beginning must have an end. And all of us shall return where we came from the soil, 6 feet under. But you see, the day of reckoning shall come. And when that day of reckoning comes, and it will come for everybody, you might regret why you ever allowed yourself to be used as a perpetrator. So Africa is one. None of us has control over life. The obvious and the obvious thing that must happen to everybody, which is a must, is death. Living on this world is by luck. Some of our friends, relatives died before the age of 5. Others died at 40. So every day you live on this world is by luck. So every dog will have its day. But that day of reckoning, will come. So let us take heart. Brothers, let us disease it from allowing to be used to met out these these acts of torture, because you don't know when the day of reckoning will come. Back to you, Abel.
Thank you so much, Henry. Gerald, your parting shot?
Yeah, thank you, Abel, for hosting me. My parting shot will go to African Union. African Union should really take charge. You know, we don't need international community like the way how these presidents who hide in, Pan-Africanism, they say that international community is coming to meddle, in our affairs. So at least African Union should take borrowed decisions and actions, you know, in our affairs, because as we can see all over Africa, electoral authoritarian is part and parcel. I mean, torture is part and parcel in as a form of governance in our affairs. So, you know, the African Charter on Democracy, I think, if I can recall it very well, it provides for two-term limits for these presidents, but we've seen presidents, they have extended their terms of office, but the African Union has just kept quiet. There is nothing, you know, we've had no statements. You know, we've had so many African Union observers observing elections, and they've, you know, put these very political statements of declaring elections to be free and fair. So they need to take positions. They don't need really to see blood shed and, you know, that kind of form of, you know, violence and whatnot. So I appeal to the media to keep on, you know, documenting and rallying behind the people, run these various stories, expose like such kind of cases. I believe that one day we shall see a greater Africa, a greater Uganda, where we all enjoy our brotherhood and you know, living in harmony. I thank you so much.
Thank you so much, all of you. You have been so great and wonderful having you in this discussion. All I want to tell our viewers outside there that and the leadership in government of Uganda, that the violation of human rights only relegates us to what one scholar called Thomas Hobbes always said, that the state of nature where life is solitary, nasty, brutish, and very short. So I will implore all of you that let's continue with the conversation. Let's discuss. Let's be courageous enough. Let's follow ACFIM on Facebook. On YouTube is ACFIM Uganda. On Twitter is ACFIM UG. Let's continue with the conversation. Let's stand up for our rights whenever the persons in power try to infringe and limit us, so that as long as the rights they are trying to limit, we are entitled to those rights.